And now, your feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled movie review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck. Alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Morbius.
We were just singing that. What a day, Eric. So, yeah, today we are reviewing Morbius. We're a little late, everyone. I apologize, but Eric and I did pay our own money and go see this when it came out on the
Yep.
weekend.
We supported pure evil.
We are part of the problem, I guess, but our morbidious curiosity got to us. No, not good. Not good. We're gonna go full spoilers on this one because the movie's already been out for a weekend. The director and Sony decided to basically go full spoilers a week before the movie even came out for some reason. Was that after the premiere or was that like during? Like, did it open in Europe? Like,
Well,
why
that
would they
was
do that?
I don't know. Maybe it was they were realizing the movie was coming out and they needed to do like damage control right away. So the movie that they released is pretty awful.
Oh
To the
my
point
god.
where like I had a rough weekend watching a bunch of movies
Dude,
for
we saw one of the best movies of probably the year. Who knows? It's very early, but we just did a wonderful interview, which you guys can all check out very soon, if not right now, with Daniels of
or the
everything.
Daniels.
I think they like to go by Daniels from what I've been reading, but we didn't ask that question. But we
We
interviewed
should have.
Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert of Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think, if we get a better movie than that this year, it's going to be a good year for movies. And then we got to see Morbius and The Bubble, which you guys can also check out our review of that. So it was a tough weekend to get through these.
Yeah, to the point where I saw Morbius on what was it, Saturday night, and it was a 10:30, no, 10:45 screening
Yeah.
at Landmark Cinemas in Whitby, and watching the movie I sat there completely and utterly stone-faced,
Oh,
just
not stoned.
counting
Okay.
just stone-faced.
Would that have helped? Maybe.
I don't think so. Just thinking to myself, when is this going to be over? Why didn't I get a Diet Cherry Coke?
You fucked up.
What? I mean, I was thinking, oh, it's really late. I don't want to be up until like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Aren't you usually up that late anyway?
I am. I'm a bit of a night owl, a bit of a Dracula myself, a bit of a Morbius. And then afterwards, I felt like crap, and I was just like, you know what? I watched trash. I'm gonna eat some trash. Went to McDonald's. Was gonna get an Oreo McFlurry.
you
but then
got
saw
it.
that they had the Cadbury McCream Flurry, and I was like, "This is the perfect way to end the
Cadbury
night."
cream egg. You got creamed
Oh
by
yeah,
Morbius.
and it
Nice.
wasn't, and it was not good. Yes,
Really,
so
it wasn't.
no.
I'm not a
I should
big.
have stuck with the Oreo.
Is that a Canadian thing or is that everywhere? But like
I
the
don't know.
Cadbury
Viewers, chime in.
The Cadbury cream egg, never been a fan. For one, why do you want a chocolate that looks like a gross egg in the middle? Like you got a yolk and then it's got this
I
sugar
kind of like the cream
white
though
stuff.
in the middle. Like,
Really, it's
like
so sugary, dude.
at
And
least I haven't had it since
I'm
I
a
was
sugary
a kid.
trash boy. I'm a trash boy. You know that. Like,
with a cinnamon toast crunch and all that.
oh,
Kind of
I got the
jazz,
cinnamon toast crunch cross Lucky Charms, which, could I have easily just mixed those two cereals together in a bowl? I could have, but when I see a good collab, I need to buy it. So I haven't tried it yet, but I did have a couple bowls of CT Crunch, but I regular CT Crunch.
Yeah, so I sat in the parking lot of McDonald's just eating this
That's even
McFlurry
sadder.
just by myself at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh yeah, because you went so late. I did the opposite, where I saw Morbius at 11:15 a.m. at Cineplex Queensway in Toronto. Nevis, for some reason, came with me. God bless her. She was, I think, Morbiusidly curious as well. It didn't work that time either.
Keep trying though.
She sat there with me, and some people have come out being like, everyone has a hate boner for this movie, and we had it before it even came out, that we were all gonna rip on it before. Which, yes, we all were ripping on it. Some of the memes and tweets were hilarious, but like, Eric and I paid our own money for this so we could talk about it right now, and I didn't go in wanting to hate it. I just there's a track record there with the Sony characters of Spider-Man universe limited.
The Sonyverse.
That with Venom and Venom 2, I'm like, I what are they doing? So, expectations were pretty low, and then it didn't even, meet those very low expectations. It
Matt,
maybe
they don't
met
know what
them.
they're doing.
Yeah,
They
so,
don't know what they're doing.
like,
And it's clear when watching this movie
yeah.
that they have no idea what is going on with this film or what they're doing in terms of their own
The characters
universe, or if it
outside of
connects
the
to the
MCU, yeah.
or like it's
So,
just,
like we said, full spoilers. So let's just get into it. And
this
it'll
movie
be
sucks,
it's
but
really
not
bad.
in the way it should suck, if you get my
Yeah.
drift. But yeah, it's just one of those movies where like you're watching it and
It feels
it's
ripped
so
out of 2003 or 4.
yeah, it's so shoddily put together as well and incoherent in how it's structured. There are literally 3 introductions to Morbius. There's one at the beginning that is kind of like your Jurassic Park, arachnophobia, Costa Rica kind of sequence where you've seen it in the trailer that he's, gathering these specific vampire bats that are kind of like piranha and bringing them back. And then it decides to flash back 25 years later to Greece when Morbius is a kid. And he's a bit of a prick when he's a kid because he calls his best friend Milo and is actually
Why does he keep that name
Lucian.
for his whole life? Why?
Yeah, I know. It's like, I'm going to
That's
call
so-
you Milo. It's like, no, my name's Lucian. Like,
and then he goes,
come on.
like, everyone just calls him Milo, and he's going,
Yeah.
guys, that's not my name. And then, like, everyone just calls him that for his adult life.
And then we're introduced to Morbius again as an adult. So in the first scene, he's an adult, and then in this third
Didn't become Morbius in
introduction-
that first intro.
No,
Did not
no,
become
no.
Morbius in the second introduction.
No, he was just gathering these bats for his kind of like mammal fish tank, as he calls
Sure.
it. And then in the
lore
third-
building.
And
Lore
then in the
building.
third scene, which I think is the most Jared Leto moment of the movie, where it's like he's winning the Pulitzer for this synthetic blood that he's created to help millions of people.
He's there and then doesn't accept it.
Exactly, and
That,
he
like,
criticizes...
that fucking makes sense.
Yeah. And so with those 3 introductions, it feels like pick one of them. Pick one. Okay, 2. Use the one where when he's a kid, but use that
Sure.
as the first scene, or have a prologue that
Oh,
is
the
like
Costa
a cold
Rica scene is
opening.
totally unnecessary. It's just they
No.
shot that shit and they're like, I guess we got to use it.
But even the Pulitzer thing, they didn't really need. They could have just gone with one or the other. They
totally
could have just
agree.
had a scene where he's at the hospital and saying like, "Oh, like I saw you on TV, rejecting the Pulitzer Prize," and from there the story is basically for people that don't know, Morbius is
Everyone
a
listening to this knows.
Spider-Man villain, specifically in the comic books, and
The living vampire.
the living vampire, and he is known to kind of be an adversary to Spider-Man and sometimes Blade. And I'm most familiar with him from the 90s animated cartoon series where he kind of became the romantic love interest to
Spider-Man.
Felicia Hardy. And so like they kind of went off and did their own thing for a little bit as well. This is another origin story set up for what is going to presumably be a Sinister Six.
Like they've been trying for the last 35 years, it seems
Yeah.
like.
And not only is this a bad superhero movie, it's just a bad genre film. Like it doesn't make any sense in its narrative structure. A lot of it is choppy and feels like there are multiple scenes either missing or versions of the film that would have fit better in certain scenes. Like even, like a lot of people are talking about like, in the trailers, there are whole sequences that aren't even in the movie, which is true. I mean, there's even one bit where Tyrese, who plays this FBI agent, talks about, this synthetic blood saving his life and his arm. And there's like this cool, like sort of
Robo
brace
arm?
that he's wearing.
Doesn't he have
And
like a
that's-
robo arm in the comics or something? And I don't think
yeah,
that
and
he
that's
has
not
that at
even
all,
that's not even shown or addressed in any capacity whatsoever. And then again, like to the character's motivations, that you have this guy who has this rare blood disease, who has to literally get 3 blood transfusions a day and has been working on trying to find a cure. He's also trying to help his friend, and his friend in New York in sort of the present day is played by Matt Smith. Jared Leto
help
plays
my friend Milo.
Jared Leto plays Morbius.
At least
And
Matt Smith looks like he's kind of having a good time.
he's trying to. There's one scene that kind of feels like it fits in like the Tom Hardy entering a
Yeah.
lobster tank and biting into a lobster. That kind of feels like that's where there's a little bit of personality in this movie, but other than that, you have a subpar superhero movie that is trying to emulate what the MCU is doing, but it's so lazily put together
Yeah.
and poorly thought out and chopped up, and it kind of again feels like it's been put through a series of test screenings and audience
Editors and
reactions, and
studio
yeah,
notes and all this kind of stuff that it just becomes this nonsense. Like, even at the beginning, like, I don't even think the movie is. I do think it's really, really bad, but like, it's not like Venom and Venom Let There Be Carnage are also very bad, but I can understand why someone would buy into its bullshit. Like, there is some fun there to be had. I just don't buy into it. I just think I would prefer Venom to be a Spider-Man villain and done properly, and properly in my eyes. But I understand the appeal of Tom Hardy's performance and the kind of love angle between him and Eddie and all that kind of stuff. Like, I get why people buy into that, where I just don't find there's anything here to buy into. Jared Leto, not interesting. Plot, not interesting. Morbius, the look, not interesting. The special effects look awful. The slow motion, even worse. Like, it's just this,
what about those ears, Matt?
oh my God, the gross little ears, dude. Like, Nevis kept laughing at me because every time they would show these weird ears that had these weird like things in them, like where
And almost like kind of like fuzzy, almost like when you're looking in like a stream or something and you see like those little fish, those like minnows.
They were so
Yeah.
gross, dude. And like I kept going, ew. Like, every time they showed him, it was the grossest part of the movie. And like, you just sit there stone faced, and like, you have the odd time where you laugh at the movie, but at least with Venom and Venom Let There Be Carnage, I remember being visibly frustrated after Venom Let There Be Carnage because I just thought that movie was nonsense. But like, at least you can kind of laugh at it. Where here,
And it was shorter
and it
too.
was so short. And like, everyone is kind of, bought into what that is, where, Jared Leto takes himself so seriously, and like, he's just the worst, and like, just just the worst person. And
It's
like,
me, Morbius.
yeah, it's so bad. And
I think if he was playing his character from House of Gucci in this, it would
as
be more
Morbius,
interesting,
yeah.
or adding an accent or something. But he's so bland. It's just
like
kind of like,
this, and he
I'm
just
so
kinda,
cool and unaffected by everything, and I'm saving the world. He weirdly reminds me of Steven Seagal in terms of like
sure,
how he kind of plays things in like in a way that he's not giving the audience anything to root for. And
yeah.
like, the funniest stuff in this movie for me is like, and it's an obvious nod as well to Nosferatu, with the ship being the Murnau, because it's the name of the director, F.W. Murnau, and paying tribute to him. 100 years Nosferatu turned.
We did bring
this
that up
year.
recently,
And
so
now
we
get
honor
Morbius.
it with Morbius.
But the funniest
Here is your
title
legacy.
card since the 355 is when Morbius is trying to come up with a cure to this disease that he has, and he's using or extracting vampire bat DNA and implementing it into this presumable cure, is where you see the boat that he's on, because he needs the funding from Milo, who's wealthy, and they never really get into
international
that.
waters.
International
Dude,
water.
Nevis laughed so hard. Like, and I came back. I went to the bathroom, so I missed that. I missed that moment, and then I leaned over because he says international waters. Like, he throws it into a line earlier in the movie.
We're gonna have to do this in international
which
waters,
doesn't make any sense
because
like,
he even says that he doesn't care if he loses his
yeah,
license.
it's so stupid. And he has all the illegal bats like in his lab. There's so much nonsense in this movie. So Nevis, I went to the bathroom, so I missed that title card. There's another one that's great too that I'll bring up. And I come back and I lean over to her and I go, "Are they in international waters?" And she started laughing and she's like, "How do you know that?" And I'm like, "Oh, he said it earlier when they're on the boat, I assumed." But that's so funny that there's an actual title card. The one I laughed at, Eric, for title cards is when they show a prison and then just say detention facility. And I'm like, of course it is. Like, why do you need a title card for that? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, are you like, I don't know. When you make a movie like this, I'm like, do they think people are that stupid? I guess if you're paying to see Morbius, maybe you are, but and I'm not insulting anyone. Eric and I
We
paid to go
paid
see
for it.
it.
We're the
We're
suckers in
yeah.
this case.
And I think most people
Literally.
are. And like that made me laugh. The incoherent final action set piece where I remember I also turned to Nevis and I'm like, the fuck is happening right now? It's just a mishmash of like the fucking smeary, painty kind of like uh uh
Echolocation.
echo location thing mixed with what's his name from X-Men who used to pop around
Oh, Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler, as well as like there's just shit flown everywhere and I'm like, you can't even see what's happening right now. Like
And
it's just
that's
like
where that kind of like early
mm,
2000s aesthetic really
yes,
comes in. Like all this needed was Disturbed and Rob Zombie on the
saliva.
soundtrack. Yeah.
I watched WrestleMania X8. It was WrestleMania weekend this past weekend, and that's why we're kind of a little bit late. I didn't record on the weekend because I was watching a lot of wrestling. But
It's the
I watched
Lord's Day.
WrestleMania X8, which was in Toronto, and Saliva performed and Drowning Pool performed. So that's the kind of era I feel like we're in with this movie. And then you have people like Tyrese, who, you know, there's a no offense to Tyrese, but he works
He's one of
well
the
in
worst
like,
police officers
yeah,
in a movie I've ever seen.
and
Like
he, oh my
it's
god,
so bad.
he's great in Fast and the Furious because everyone in those movies suits those movies, right? But then when you take them and put into other things, I'm like, I just can't. It's not working, dude. And then Al Madrigal, who plays Alberto Rodriguez, tries to bring some comedic relief to the movie, and like I did laugh once or twice at some of his lines, but he just felt like I thought he was genuinely funny once or twice throughout it, but it was just such a weird addition, like these two guys just bumbling around, and I'm like not really trying to like I'm like, what is your purpose? Like, why?
It's
I
the
get
generic kind
yeah.
of like cops who are kind of like always two steps behind of figuring out what's going on,
Jared
or
Harris just phoning it in.
yeah, and he's barely in the movie as well as kind of this mentor to both Milo and Morbius. And yeah, like you're just watching the film and you're thinking to yourself, like, I'm not against the concept of a horror movie based story in a comic book
Totally.
milieu. I think that that's fine. And the one thing I did like about the movie, which I was hoping that there would be a little bit more of, was
BS
like just
of
no, just like the
no.
opening title, like the
Morbius. I was saying you were saying more, so I went BS like Morbius.
right. No, I don't want any more BS in Morbius. There's plenty of
I'm
that.
saying,
But I
yeah.
actually really liked the opening neon credit
I did,
of
but it doesn't
Morbius.
fit the
No, it doesn't.
movie.
No, it doesn't. It kind of feels
I
like it
love the
belongs with
look.
a
It's not on the
guest
poster. It's
or
not
in
on
the Miramax
anything. Like,
logo that comes up in
yeah,
the 90s.
like I don't get me wrong. Also, kind of like the neon thing. Like the at least the M. I like the neon M that
That's what. Yeah,
appears.
that's what I
And
liked.
especially Matt, I want to steal that neon M, but I also don't
But
want to
not
be
from that movie.
yeah. I also don't want to be associated with Morbius. Um, I agree with you there, but then the end credit sequence, like it felt like it didn't fit the same movie. And that's where you kind of get this weird mismatch of like, Matt Smith feels like he's in a completely different movie.
Well, even how
Um,
Matt Smith becomes a vampire as well. They don't show you a scene of
no.
him taking the formula
And
or him turning. Like
but he has that
it's
moment coming to the detention facility. Thank God they let us know. And
yeah. And he has the moment where like afterwards
who's
it's like he's
drinking
doing his
blood out of
little
his flask and he's doing
yeah,
his little like
makeover.
yeah, it's just like it's so silly. And like another classic thing, it's like the laziest thing is like, oh, what will we have him fight? Oh, another Morbius. It's just
Yeah.
like that's why it feels like not even phase 1 of Marvel. It feels like this shit we got, even
-0 of
yeah, like
Marvel.
between
Or
Spider-Man
oh
and
negative, I guess
X-Men.
I should
Yeah,
say.
like between that mid 2000s, like before and after the Spider-Man trilogy and the X-Men movies and before Iron Man, you got that weird period where people were like superhero movies and like just threw out random janky ass kind of shit.
I mean,
And
this makes Spawn look like a masterwork.
Spawn has some personality at least, even if it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily land. And then we've discussed it enough. Obviously, we don't love the movie at all. But the post credit scenes are some of the most egregious things I've ever seen in my life, especially
Yeah.
if you're a fan of the Spider-Man movies or the MCU. it takes what is one of the best Spider-Man villains, one of the best MCU villains, and
One of the great
completely
actors.
Michael Keaton. I think he's great. I love Michael Keaton. And you take him and you just completely shit on it. And it's just like, so for you might be listening to this because you didn't even see the movie and because you
You
probably
don't
don't
care.
care. The first post credits has Michael Keaton get it. You see the rip from Spider-Man No Way Home, and then for some reason, we're gonna go deep onto this, maybe 10 more minutes of this podcast, but like some reason he gets ripped um out of the MCU universe and placed into the Morbius universe, which is confirmed that it is the Venom verse. So these movies take place in the same universe.
Hope they have better
So,
food in this joint.
and then that line, I'm like, what? That's
Well,
the
that
line.
scene actually also reminded me, and I tweeted this, of David Lynch's Lost Highway, because in that movie, spoiler alert for people who haven't seen Lost Highway, there's a scene where Bill Pullman, who's accused of killing his wife, played by Patricia Arquette, when it's actually what's his name, Beretta. He's actually a real life murderer. I'm forgetting his name now. I'll remember it after. Robert Blake. And so um, Bill Pullman is sent to prison and put into a jail cell, and then he transforms into Balthasar Getty, and that kind of was the early prototype of David Lynch's flipping the script for Mulholland Drive. But in that moment, it reminded me of that, because when Bill Pullman goes from Bill Pullman to Balthasar Getty, the police or the warden lets him out because they don't have this guy on record.
Sure. That's fine as a concept. It just doesn't make any sense.
Oh
Like
no. Well,
I
especially when when Spider-Man No Way Home established that everything was reversing and going back to normal, and that like the whole idea is that if something is off, it's going to
yeah.
throw
So like
every
Venom
multiverse
Venom
off.
coming into the MCU makes sense because it's bringing in villains or people who know about Spider-Man. Yes, maybe that Venom didn't know about Spider-Man, but because of the hive mind thing that they kind of established, you can kind of buy into their bullshit on that,
Well,
right?
also just Eddie
Where
Brock is just kind
yeah,
of oblivious in general,
sure,
I
but like
think.
him being sucked in makes sense for Adrian Toomes to get placed into the Venom universe. And I'm sure, Sony or, who the hell knows what they're going to do after this. Like we'll try to explain that, but then, then you get more credits
More retconning.
and then, yeah, you get more credits and then you get a scene that literally makes zero sense where you have Michael Morbius driving through like not the desert, but like, a flat land kind of thing.
It
And,
looks like a car commercial or a commercial
for
for
a
a watch or
Porsche, yeah,
something. Yeah.
for Porsche. And then he gets
I'm
out of the
Jared Leto,
car,
and I only drive this kind of car.
and then he gets out of the car, and Vulture appears in his full Vulture suit, which sure, and then goes. I don't know the exact thing he says, but it is one of the worst line deliveries. Eric, you said it sounded like an AI, and
It didn't
like
sound. It either sounded like Michael Keaton recorded it like in
in
the
his
middle of
on
like,
his phone in his
yeah,
in the
doing other
closet.
things, or they took like an AI voice of Michael Keaton and added it in last
It's
minute,
you
because
could tell he wasn't there because he had the
it's
full
so
helmet
stilted.
on.
It's
And
so stilted, the dialogue. Where like, I mean, it is arch to
oh, he's like,
begin with.
I don't know why I'm here, but I think it has something to do with Spider-Man. He's like, I think
Yeah,
me
I'm
and you
putting a
should,
team together
I think
with
me and
people
you should,
like
yeah,
us.
we should team up for some good. And you're like, what? What? First off, the worst line reading I've ever heard in my life. Second off, why the fuck would Morbius even take this guy's call? For one, I guess he doesn't know he's a bad guy, but
Well, how did
two,
he get in touch with them to begin with? I guess
yeah,
another thing.
two, why would Morbius care about Spider-Man at all at this point? We've just spent a whole movie establishing that he's an anti-hero and that he doesn't necessarily like his thirst for blood and doesn't want to kill innocent people, and that he would prefer to drink this artificial blood, but then wanted to stop Milo, who was doing bad shit. Is just like, why then have one of your villains who, I think was one of the best because we could kind of see where he was coming from, but still did pretty bad things, killed people, like went after a teenager, some very bad stuff. And then he has even at the end of Homecoming, which is the last time we saw him, is like, oh, he knows Spider-Man's identity. I guess now would it be that he doesn't know Peter Parker's identity because of what happened, right? But he
Right.
would know Spider-Man had something to do with everything from the events of Homecoming. But then why would Morbius give a shit? Like, I just like, it seems like they're setting up a Sinister Six, which whether that has Venom and Morbius and, but like
Craven,
Craven in
Madam
this. And
Web.
if you're setting up, this is the problem with all of these like villain movies, is like you can't make them villains, right? Like you have to make them somewhat likable, even if it doesn't accomplish that. You're still making them an anti-hero. So they might do bad things, but ultimately they are going to make the right decision, because you just can't have Venom biting people's heads off and being horrible and then just that's the end of the movie. And then for some reason you can't do that. I would love if you did, like, you saw, say what you want about Joker, but like at least it committed to him, you know, not being so great by the end of it, and like
But it
committed to
also
him
used
being a
mental
villain.
illness
I agree with
specifically
that.
to make you more sympathetic
I
towards the
agree that I'm
character.
not saying it's perfect, but they, at least what I mean is by staying true that they are a villain. The way they went about that,
Right.
not great. So yes, we can't win in either situation, but
Whoever wins, Jared Leto loses.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, I guess he has played Joker as well, but I don't know, dude.
And
Like,
that's the other thing as well, like thinking about like he's done these sort of like post-credit redos for both, Zack Snyder's Justice League and now this. And it's just like you're watching, oh, and also like his method acting of like,
yeah,
walking with crutches. It's just like, dude,
get
give
over
it up.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're not hot shit. Like it's just like I don't know. I mean, every time I hear something about Jared Leto or watch one of his performances, I just like, I don't understand how he keeps getting hired and how sometimes good filmmakers are interested in using him. I don't know why the David Finchers and the Darren Aronofskys and the Denis Villeneuves and the late Jean-Marc Vallée were all like, okay, like, this guy has something. It's like he's just such a sleazy cheapskate of an actor, and like watching this, he brings nothing to the table as Morbius. I like Morbius the cartoon character from the 90s show, but I don't want to see him again in any capacity, whether it be a sequel to Morbius or as Sinister Six. I'm fast. I guess I am morbidly curious, or however you put it, to see like what they're going to do with Craven. Even though I was kind of looking forward to Craven, but now I'm like, I don't know about that anymore. So
Yeah, I feel you on that, dude. I'm sorry, I'm trying to reconnect my headphones. They came undone. One sec. Um, there we go.
I mean, that's still more interesting than
I
anything
missed a
that
lot of
happens in
that, but like
Morbius.
I missed a lot of what you were just saying, so I hope I don't repeat it. But like I just, yeah, I makes me not excited for Craven as well. And like I love the cast that they're putting together, but someone made a good point of being like, well, there was a great cast for Venom and Venom 2, and that didn't really work out. And then I wouldn't say on paper that this cast was, had me going, oh shit, this is gonna be good. But like with Craven, at least the people that they have involved, the director I like a bit more than both Espinosa and Andy Serkis, and
And
especially
Daniel Espinosa too. Like he's such, like he kind of came to fame with Easy Money, and him and Joel Kinnaman at the same time, and he's done a lot of stuff like Safe
Safe
House with
House. Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds, and just some of the most generic middle of the road studio movies that as soon as you're finished watching them you completely forget.
Yeah, with Child 44, Life.
Ugh.
Like, yeah, I agree. So this just post credits, just it upsets me as a fan of the MCU, and a fan of Michael Keaton, a fan of that character that you would have hoped that got brought back into the MCU at some point. But I guess now they're probably done with that character and with how they're going to move forward with, Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the MCU, that maybe they're like, yeah, take him back, do whatever you want with him. Um, even if they didn't know exactly what they were going to do, because I'm sure still the people at Marvel Studios are like, Jesus Christ, no. Kevin Feige is like, guys, what are you doing? And like, even if they don't have plans for him, because like it's just still, it's everything is connected technically, and like it makes up for this thing that you're like, are we going to get some weird Sinister Six? Like they said that there's a Spider-Man in this universe, which is why he would bring up Spider-Man. So what are their plans there? Like my theory is that it will either be Andrew Garfield, and that's how you bring him back into the fray because people really did like him in No Way Home. And if he's interested in returning to the character, maybe you have Venom and Craven and Morbius and now Vulture all be part of that rogues gallery or whatever the hell you're going to do with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, or it's going to be another Tom Holland Spider-Man, but just a variant version where we'll have the MCU version and then you'll have a Tom Holland Sony Spider-Man
But he'll be dressed and
villain.
acts like emo Spider-Man from Spider-Man
Sure.
3.
Yeah, I hope so. So it's just weird all around and just it feels so like shoved in there and feels like it has nothing to do with the movie, and it absolutely makes zero sense with what we just saw throughout the entire thing. And it just feels like, the frustrating thing of like not really having a plan of what you want to do or make sure that it makes sense, but they're like, oh, we do want these things to connect and we do want these villains to team up, so let's just throw this scene in there and we'll figure it out. And I'm like, will
And
you?
that's the whole movie, though.
Will you?
Like it does feel like somebody in like an editing class presented this project. It's like, we have these scenes from this movie, whoever makes the most coherent or best cut will use for the film. And even this cut, which is the movie that is being screened, if you've seen enough genre movies, if you've seen enough superhero movies, you can kind of piece it together. But it still feels so choppily sort of put together in a way that doesn't really ever feel like it's a movie. Like it just kind of feels like you're just
And guess
watching, like,
what felt the exact same? Suicide Squad. And
yeah,
like
it
it's
truly
just
does.
it's like maybe there's a common denominator there. I don't know, but like it's just yeah. Um I don't know, dude. It's bad. I'm being generous with a 1.5, but that was only because I saw a movie
The
that I thought,
bubble.
yeah, that I thought was worse. So, I mean, if you want to just hear us being negative Nancy's this whole weekend, go listen to our review of The Bubble. Eric, sorry, what was your score?
I'm also
Um,
giving it 1.5, and the only reason I'm giving it that extra half isn't even necessarily because Michael Keaton's in the movie. It's because I saw Judd Apatow's The Bubble, and that truly is a steaming
it made
pile of
me
shit.
that movie. Go listen to our review. I'm sure we will go into detail on that as well. And that movie made me rethink everything. Where I went on my letterbox, I'm like, I can't rate this low anymore, or not low, but like I gave it an okay rating. I went back to drive my car, Eric, and I was like, I gotta bump this up like 1.5 more stars because I'm like, it is an insult that I gave it only a 3 because like I enjoyed Drive My Car. I've been thinking about it more. It's a beautiful movie. Just didn't connect with me on every level, but like I felt bad that I gave it a
You
3
should.
at
You should
first,
after watching
and
The
then
Bubble.
I watched The Bubble. I'm like, I'm rethinking every rating I've ever given because like I have to give this movie a 1 and I have to bump every other movie up 1 star because it's not as bad as this. Anyways, go listen to our review of The Bubble. Morbius gets a 1.5 from me and a 1.5 for Eric, which ties it with Venom Let There Be Carnage for me of the lowest rated Spider-Man movie, I guess. And I don't know which one I would take Let There Be Carnage, I think, over Morbius. So I think this would be the lowest for me.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I think the first Venom's not great either.
no,
Like, I
neither do
think that
I. But
first,
like, I would take either of those movies, I think, over this.
yeah, that's true. And I like Tom Hardy a lot more as an actor,
Yeah, same.
anyways, than Jared Leto. And I think Jared Leto is the X factor in this.
Yeah.
God, he sucks.
He's the worst. Thank you all for listening or watching. If you like this, like I said, we have a review up for The Bubble right now, which I'm sorry, we hate being negative guys, but like sometimes you gotta be true to yourself and true to the movie. Um, Also check out our review of Everything Everywhere All at
All at
Once,
once.
which we absolutely love. So go listen to us get really animated and excited about something we really, really love. So please go check out that review. Check that movie out. I'm just going to plug that movie April 8th when it comes out. And I'm plugging that because we also have interviews up right now with the Daniels, which you guys can check that out. And Eric, you also did an interview too.
Yeah, with Ki Hui Kwan, who, for a lot of people that grew up in the 80s and early 90s watching movies like The Goonies and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, will recognize him, or would recognize uh, his work as a child actor, and now he's back in this amazing performance as both a supportive husband, but also a kick-ass, time traveling variant.
So good.
And it is such a great performance. A lovely man to talk to. So kind and generous with his time, and again, like, I think honestly Michelle Yeoh and Key are giving two of the best performances of the year. And I know it's still early, and the movie itself, I think, is truly one of the best movie going experiences in quite some time. So
Agreed. So go check that out. Eric did a great job. Go support that. I think that's it, everyone. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, mostly at untitledmoviepodcast.com, and a one-stop shop over on Letterboxd at untitled_movies. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
I'm just going to eat another McFlurry and cry.